On your Thursday episode of Locked On Raptors, we take a look at the last week that's been for the Toronto Raptors and give them a grade. Is this perhaps the lowest point in the Masai Ujiri tenure? We'll dig into that question. Plus, are there reasons for optimism through all the gloom this week? And we close it out with the return of a classic parlor game. It's all coming up with Vivek Jacob at Raptors.com. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Thursday, July the 6th, and I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 9 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on Twitter at WoodleySean. You can follow, subscribe to, rate, and review the podcast for free wherever you get your podcasts. We are also on YouTube if you want to join the cavalcade of folks who have jumped over and joined the YouTube family, subscribe to the channel. It's been great to see a nice surge of subscribers lately. We love you all very, very much. If you've not done it yet, what are you doing? Just please help me out. I want my ego stroked. It would be much appreciated. Thank you. Let's get to it. On today's show, we're digging into all sorts of stuff. We're going to talk off the top about what's been a pretty bad week in terms of performance by the front office, I would say. And it's not as though the actual decisions this week were necessarily all that bad. You couldn't match Fred VanVleet's offer from the Rockets. That was a good decision to not match it, but all the decisions that have led to this week have maybe kind of left this as a bit of a low point for the Raptors front office. We'll talk about that. We've also got we're going to try to weave in a little bit of happiness here too. I feel like I've been a big bummer. I usually try to make it fun to be a Raptors fan on this podcast. That's kind of the whole thing. And I've been a little down, and I think justifiably, on what the team is going to look like next year. But we're going to dig into some reasons for optimism if, in fact, the roster is as it is going into the year. And we're going to return an old classic game to close things out with a little Fred VanVleet spin to say goodbye in the form of That Random Raptors Game in the final segment. Ooh, hold your breath. It's going to be very exciting. Let's bring in our guest. He is, of course, from Raptors.com. Vivek Jacob. Big V, how the hell are you, buddy?
I'm doing all right. We got the Ashes going with some cricket. We got Wimbledon going. So peak English summer. I'm enjoying all of it. And just keeping myself distracted from all that's going on in Raptorland.
What is your cucumber sandwich game? Do you make them at home? Do you have a recipe when you're watching Wimbledon? You feel like a cucumber sandwich man.
No, I'm not a cucumber sandwich man.
Have you had a cucumber sandwich at all during your watching of Wimbledon in your entire life?
No.
Wow. Misjudged. Unbelievable.
I can't say that I have. Yeah. The closest I would have come to having cucumbers while watching Wimbledon would have been if I was eating a biryani and there's some raita and some.
This might just be a food podcast now. Yeah, we're going to talk about biryani now. If you have a great cucumber sandwich recipe, drop it in the comments. All right, let's get to the Raptors, shall we? It's been a week. It sure has. Fred VanVleet walks to the Houston Rockets. Michael Grange drops a bomb about the internal strife within the team last year. Some of the key characters sort of noted in that strife still remain on the team. So hopefully things can be smoothed over if, in fact, everybody is returning. I would hope that a new coach and some fresh ideas will go a long way to helping do that. These are adults. They'll probably figure it out. But it's not been a banner week for the Raptors. I think a lot of folks look at the full mid-level for Dennis Schroder as a bit of a head-scratcher. Obviously, he was the best guard left on the market, and you didn't want to get totally squeezed out of the market, so you got to go pay the dude to bring him in to replace Fred VanVleet, at least in theory. I don't think he's actually going to replace Fred VanVleet in the starting lineup because the idea of a Schroder plus Scottie plus Pascal plus Jakob Poeltl featured starting lineup, there is no shooting there. That is bad. I don't know how you're going to make that work. All that said, I kind of want to get your feel here, Big V. This has not been a banner week for the Raptors front office. You could argue it's been maybe the low point of the Masai Ujiri tenure. We can talk about other candidates there if you want, but what's your sort of grade for what's gone on, the way the Raptors lose Fred VanVleet, the way they sort of bounce back and recover with a nice Jalen McDaniels signing? How are you feeling about the Schroder thing? What's your grade for the Raptors in the first 6 or so days of free agency here?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't go like above a D for now.
Mm-hmm.
I think when you look at the situation, you had kind of all your chips in bringing back everyone. And so
Yeah.
I think with the trade deadline comments that they were confident that they could bring everyone back, they obviously um, misplayed or misread the Houston Rockets as a threat. I
Mm-hmm.
think, in hindsight, you can kind of say, oh, well, it seemed like the Rockets were just like dead set on bringing James Harden back. And so why would you see them as a threat? Well, that's part of their job.
Yeah, you need to get. It only takes one team, and
Yeah,
the one team with $61 million in cap space looming out there probably should have been taken as more of a serious threat.
exactly. So I think now with Fred out of the picture, there's a definitive ceiling on what they can accomplish next season, because of how they've maneuvered so far.
Mm-hmm.
And Dennis Schroder, there's a pretty big gap between those two guys, I would say. And I think it really does accelerate, the conversations on Pascal.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think all of that together, I wouldn't go above a D. That being said, it's maybe a little bit incomplete for now
100%.
until we know what Pascal's situation is going to be, whether he is going to be wearing a Raptors uniform next season. And then maybe, even when I saw the Jaden McDaniels signing, that's also a bit of an incomplete for me, because I'm like, hey, I'm okay with this signing
Mm-hmm.
if you kind of get rid of that logjam between Boucher and Precious and Koloko, and if you bring in a guard via a trade there.
Yeah.
If the roster stays as is, then I don't like the Jaden McDaniel signing, because now
Jaden's the really good one.
Jalen. Sorry,
It's okay. I've
I
been
would
thinking
love Jaden.
every time I write McDaniels in a theoretical lineup, I'm like,
Yeah.
what if that was Jaden?
Yeah, Jaden would be a very different conversation. Sorry, but yeah, Jalen.
One pick ahead of Malachi Flynn.
Yeah, so I think that's the aspect of it that's incomplete for me.
Mm-hmm.
But for now, they put all their chips into this summer. They pushed everything to this summer, and to not come away with Fred, and obviously they're right to not match the offer.
Yeah.
But it's definitely, not the outcome that they were hoping for.
No, I mean, let me take you to a little place called Hyrule, Vivek. I've been playing. Have you ever heard of this? Tears of the Kingdom, this game.
No.
You can have the best laid plans. So essentially, a couple days ago, I was like, I'm gonna build like a war machine to try to fight this big enemy called the Lionel. The Lionels are real tough customers, real nasty business. And I built this car that had laser beams and flame emitters and a cannon on the top. And I was like, this is great. This is my best laid plan. This is me threading the needle with 3 pending free agents going into the offseason. And then I started driving the car and it caught fire instantly. That kind of feels like the Raptors' best laid plans going up in flames with Fred walking. And now we're sitting here with a burnt out husk of a Jeep that I've built in this game. I don't know. I'm trying to tie in my real life to the podcast, huh? For me, I think, I think the sort of process behind running it back, I've been, pretty comfortable with thinking that running it back was probably the best of imperfect options. But now they're left with this sort of like, okay, the thing broke down, the Lionel's bearing down on us, how do we react? And sometimes you have like a nice big sword you can pull out and knock that thing down. Other times you're totally screwed. I think right now we're unsure what the Raptors' next move is in this bit of combat, right? Like, I think you're totally right. It is incomplete. We don't know, if they extend Pascal, I think that improves the grade on the summer because you get some security there and you're not going into next year with him as a pending UFA. I think if you trade Pascal, there's a world in which it's improved there as well, just as a matter of kind of ripping off the Band-Aid, even if I think there's not necessarily a super compelling offer that I've been sort of, presented to my eyeballs from the trade machine or whatever over the course of the last few days here. And there is, the potential of them really pulling a rabbit out of a hat, right? Like maybe there is some sort of Damian Lillard swing still to be had. I know no one wants to hear it. I did sneak in some Scottie Barnes for Damian Lillard propaganda on a radio hit on the Fan 590 over the weekend. And since then, it's gone mainstream. Michael Pina's writing about it. Will Lou's talking about it. The Joe Wolfon and Joey Cash are talking about it on Pound the Rock. I think there's like an actual argument to be made that there's a sort of last-ditch effort to save this Pascal era by going to swing for Dame. If that happens, then the offseason changes as well. It's not to say it's going to happen. I would be shocked if it did. But there are avenues here to kind of salvage this. Are there any that have kind of stood out to you? Is there like something you're hoping to see happen here, a particular trade, maybe just the extension for Pascal? Like, what do you think could make this something better than a D plus offseason so far?
Path to redemption. I think it definitely is along the lines of what you said with the Scottie for Dame. If you have something there, I haven't looked at the machinations of making the salary work. And
you can go to my Twitter and find it. I've been pretty liberal in sharing this very good trade idea the last little while.
So I think that's one thing I look at. And you don't want to end up in a similar conversation. I mean, I guess the thing now is, what is the ceiling of a Dame Pascal team? And now, it would have been nice to have the asset in Fred to move and maybe, make that sort of view of the roster. Or, you're giving up Fred and Scottie in the deal.
Which I don't know why the Blazers would do that. I've had this sort of in the Locked On Raptors Discord, which you should go and join. It's a lot of fun. There was this sort of thought of, it doesn't make as much sense to go trade for Dame without Fred on the team to kind of be the backcourt partner. And I get it. Like, they would be a better team if Dame, Fred, OG, Siakam, Poeltl was their starting five. But I also think, like, you kind of, if you don't have Fred on the roster, which they don't, if you were to make the Dame trade, you could, in theory, kind of avoid some of the second apron troubles that would come from having all of those guys on your roster. And I do think like a Dame, OG, Siakam, Poeltl core four is extremely good. Like, it's really good. I don't know how else to put it. It would be one of the better starting groups in basketball, I think, and would really give them a shot in the Eastern Conference, an Eastern Conference that has creaky teams at the top that are not perfect by any means. Again, we don't have
to. What's going to happen with Philly?
No, we don't. Like, things could go weird. There could be like a weird gap year there, right? Like, it's tough. Do you have any last parting shots on the Dame thing? Again, I keep on throwing that out there. It's not going to happen. We know this. It's probably going to end up with him going to Miami. But if the Blazers are actually looking at making a real big trade and like getting actual stuff back on their team that will help them, you could argue that a Scottie Barnes package is the single best thing that could be sent back to Portland to make it all work. I know it pisses a lot of people off to think about trading Scottie, but also, what are the odds Scottie actually becomes the thing everybody hopes he can be? Odds are, in the history of basketball, it's suggested it's pretty slim that he's going to become the top 10 player we all hope he can be, even though I think he has the capacity to do it. Doing it and having the capacity to do it are two very different things. Any last parting shots there before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, I think the last thing I'd go back to is if that Scottie route is still sort of untenable for the front office, I think, we kind of saw that, he was untouchable in KD conversations. So if the front office is still like, he's the one guy that's just not going to be available. I think these Pascal conversations I'm looking to see, and I've said this before, is how close does that mimic, say what Indiana did when they traded Paul George. Sure. Obviously it'll be a heck of a home run to hit, but if you pull off something like what OKC you did in getting Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, right?
Trading Paul George, good for your franchise. Take notes, Clippers.
But that's kind of what you're looking at. And, Masai kind of has his own version of it from Denver when he traded Carmelo Anthony. And so I think that's what I would look to see and compare in that way. If it is a Pascal deal that ends up happening, I still think the front office would be, reluctant to trade Scottie. And so I still think odds are it's a Pascal move if there is a move. And so, yeah, that's kind of how I'm measuring it right now.
We're going to come back on the other side. We're going to get into the reasons for optimism with this roster going into a new season, which are hopefully abound. We'll dig into what excites us about this roster, if it is going to stand pat, if there is going to be no more moves, if there are no rabbits to be pulled out of hats. We'll get to all of that very shortly here. But first, I got to tell you about our friends over at BetterHelp. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Sometimes in life, we're faced with tough choices, and the path forward isn't always clear. Whether you're dealing with decisions around career, relationships, or anything else, therapy helps you stay connected to what you really want while you navigate your life so you can move forward with confidence and excitement. Trusting yourself and making decisions that align with your values is like anything. The more you practice it, the easier it gets, and the more you can talk about it with somebody, the more you're going to get those decisions right. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule, and you can just fill out a brief questionnaire to get started and get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists anytime for no additional charge, which is a big deal. Sometimes it's not always going to click the first time you get a therapist, but you can switch with no additional charge with BetterHelp. Go check them out. Let therapy be your map with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, we continue on here, running over long in the first segment, as we've done a lot lately because there's just so much to talk about off the top. It's so juicy and beefy these days, Big V. Let's get into maybe a bit of a shift of tone. I think we're both a little bit down on what this roster is going to be capable of in 23-24. Again, there are silver linings to the Fred departure, longer-term financial flexibility, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to get to see what Scottie Barnes has to offer. That's for sure. Not having any shooting around him will make it harder. But what's your sort of read right now as far as like going into the season? What's got you excited? What are the things about this roster, if it's going to be essentially as is, what's got you a little bit excited about the potential machinations of how this is all going to work on the floor?
I think the thing that has me most excited is, and especially if they do go ahead and make the Pascal trade, is a definitive direction.
Sure.
Right? And you look at the coaching staff, from the head coach down to everyone that's working with him, they are extremely player development inclined. And so that's where now you get to see, okay, maybe there hasn't been quite the pipeline there was between the 905 and the parent club. And so what does that look like this season? And then you look at the team as well. What are the steps that are going to be taken from the start of training camp right down to April? And so I think those are the things that would excite me in terms of knowing that path and saying, okay, this is where the team is going to have their focus. And so what are the steps, all these young guys, whether it's Scottie, whether it's Precious, we'll see with Jeff Datman Jr., all those players getting into the mix, obviously Grady Dick. And maybe one guy who we haven't talked about as much, Christian Coloco. What did his development look like from last season to this? So those are the things that probably have me most excited.
Yeah, I think there are certainly going to be some fun lineups you can put together with the players on this roster. I don't think you'll be able to do it for 48 minutes a game where you have really fun and lineups to kind of make sense, but I do think for me, I'm excited about any lineup they can throw out where Scottie is playing with that minimum 3 shooters. I think that is a thing for me that I'm excited by, right? I think Scottie has the potential to be very good, right? You have to have the right circumstances around him for him to properly flourish, which I'm not sure they have right now. But there will be pockets of games where, it's kind of turned to him and it's like, all right, Scottie, go nuts. This is you. And I could see some lineup combinations where, any combination where Scottie is playing with OG, Gary Trent Jr. and Grady Dick might be awful defensively, but that will, I think, be a thing where you can see what the offense can look like with Scottie kind of at the helm and a proper situation around him. I think I'm fascinated to see the sort of growth of the younger guys. You mentioned Koloko. Like, I think as much as I'm pretty down on the Dennis Schroder signing, I think having like an actual point guard to run second unit minutes with Koloko will be helpful, even if I don't necessarily have super high hopes for the Schroder-Koloko duo as like the next great pick and roll combination in NBA history. I think it can at least help that development along. And yeah, the Precious Achiuwa, massively important season for him. He's got money on the line. It's going to be really fascinating to see like what the real version of Precious Achiuwa is as well. Like those younger sort of developmental pieces are the thing to watch this year. And if you go in just sort of accepting like there are going to be some growing pains, like it's going to be kind of ugly. The offense might be tremendously awful for long stretches of games, more so than it even was last year. I think there's going to be some excitement and joy to be gleaned from that, as for sure. What are your thoughts on the defense? Because I've been sort of thinking about this. I think there's a chance the defense is like fantastic and like genuinely is a thing to hang their hat on. I know Darko comes in as more of an offensively oriented guy, or at least that's the way he's kind of been branded. We have no idea until he gets in the job what his actual, sort of philosophies on defense will be. But I do think like the spine of Poeltl down the middle, OG on the wing, Dennis Schroder, as much as he's not a great offensive player right now, is an excellent defensive player at the point of attack. I do think Scottie made some strides last year defensively, although he's going to have to take some serious ones with his on-ball defense this year if he's going to be at the point of attack a lot. But I think there's a pretty good infrastructure here. You throw in McDaniels, Koloko, Achiuwa, like all really good defensive players who drove positive defensive play for the Raptors last year, in the case of the guys who were actually on the team. Where are you at with the sort of level of optimism on the defense? Because I do think there's a world in which it's like a top 5 unit.
Yeah, I would struggle to go that high. I think even top 10 would be an accomplishment. And I think I probably set them, as league average is what I would be, what would be my expectations going in. But everything above that would be an improvement. I just think, when you've got a new coaching staff, when you're learning new stuff, when you're changing the roster potentially as much as, might still be left to changed. I think that's where my doubts kind of creep in. And so sure. I think obviously individually, a lot of good things to say about Yak and McDaniels. And I think that, again, until that logjam kind of clears, I'm going to have to just side with being on the league average side of things.
I guess I think that's kind of a little low. Like, they were the number 6 defense after the All-Star break last year with Yak, kind of as that backline anchor. And yes, you lose Fred VanVleet's off-ball wizardry and like his dig downs and all of that stuff, like really, really valuable. But I do think like there is something to the idea if Scottie is like, because I don't think Scottie's issues on ball have necessarily been those of like inability. I think it's been like overzealousness and over sort of, and like not really trusting his length and his own athleticism at times. And I do think that's something you can rectify. And I think just the idea of having like a 6'9" dude with a 7'2" wingspan at the top of your defense, that feels very disruptive to me. If he can properly sort of find the balance of not lurching too far for steals and getting out of position and all that. It's a hard thing to learn, but I do think there were strides he made last year on defense, more so in the rim protection side of things. But like, I don't think he doesn't understand defense or anything like that. He's a really smart player. And I think there is like a defensive upside that has yet to be even remotely tapped into for him. And if you have that disruptive force at the top of your defense and you're able to play a more conservative defense with Jakob Poeltl kind of playing in a drop, like, I don't know. I'm pretty optimistic about cobbling together something really good. It's going to be by necessity as well, because the offense might be like 28th. And so the defense will have to be fantastic for them to have a shot. But I think to call it league average is like an early expectation, I think, is maybe underestimating the overall defensive talent on the roster.
I mean, maybe. I don't know. I also look back at that, what was it, 15-10 with Yak, and I also look at that stretch and like the teams that they played, and I'm not gonna read too much into that. And so I think over the course of an 82 game season, I would like to, and again, like some of it is also just, is it just Fred that's gone? Is it now Fred and Pascal that's gone? That's a big chunk of your starting five from last season that won't be around. So I think I'm still waiting for some clarity. And so before all of that shakes out, I'll just be on league average, no real expectations, and then we can set it all after that.
Yeah, I guess I'm sort of painting this through the lens of Pascal's on the team.
The team as is. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, those are our reasons for optimism. I hope we got you juiced up. Yeah. Any other like small ones? Any other things that are like exciting to you? Is it just like getting to see a new offense, getting to see a defense that's not totally insane? Like, is there anything like Darko related you're particularly excited about?
Yeah, just again, the things he's talked about with the ball movement, player movement, and that's something that hopefully is a breath of fresh air for this team offensively. Obviously, it's been an eyesore the last couple of years, and so I think getting to just look like more of a normal basketball team. Obviously, the shooting isn't where it needs to be. Because
not having a single credible pull-up threat on the team is I think being underrated as a thing that could spell doom for this roster. It's not good.
Yeah, and so I think that aspect of it is like, hey, there's only the ball movement and play movement's only going to do so much. Like, if you have open shots and you can't knock them down, it doesn't really matter. So that aspect of it is still troubling. Like, initially you thought, oh, okay, now you've added Grady Dick to, Fred and OG and Gary. And so you've increased that. We don't know what's going to happen with Otto Porter Jr. So theoretically you could kind of make the case that you had like 5 shooters that should be reliable. Now Fred's, basically Fred's out, Grady's in, and I don't know that Grady will be attempting 10 threes a game in his rookie season.
Might have to.
He might have to. But again,
10 threes a game and 9 minutes a game.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll pivot. We'll come back on the other side. And we will get into a return of a great game, a classic game. Everybody loves it. That Random Raptors Game. Vivek, you're about to go through the gauntlet, babies. We're going to throw it back to the 2016-17 season. Collect your thoughts while we take a quick second to promote our pals over at Locked On Leafs. Go check out Locked On Leafs. They've made a lot of signings, some of them good, some of them horrible in the offseason. Go check out the show, and Mike and Dave will tell you which ones were good and why, which ones were bad and why. Please go check them out on your favorite podcast apps and on YouTube. All right, Big V, it's time. We're bringing back That Random Raptors Game because I wanted to have some fun on the podcast because I'm sick of talking about rumors and scuttlebutt and subterfuge and trades and depressing stuff. So let's have some fun. Roll back the clock and play That Random Raptors Game, a game that we haven't played for a little bit on the show, but is a through line throughout the history of the podcast, even dating back to the Raptors HQ days, way back at the headquarters days for those who are the real sickos who have been around listening to my voice since then. I'm sorry. But how this game works, I pick a random game in Raptors history. Usually it has a theme to it. There is a theme today. And you have to guess who played in that game. You get 3 strikes. If you get 3 strikes, I win. Dealer takes the money. If you don't get 3 strikes, you win, and you get all the bragging rights. Are you ready to play That Random Raptors Game?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Hell yeah. We're going to have a little bed music for this too, if you're listening, just to kind of set the mood a little bit. Here we go. Get the theme song, the full breadth of the theme song of the podcast, which everybody seems to love. Okay, so today we're throwing it all the way back to 2017, January 17th, 2017 to be exact. And the reason why I've chosen this date, Big V, is it's a historic date for one Fred VanVleet. The first time he hits double digits in an NBA game. He came off the bench in this game. He had 10 points, 4 of 6 from the field, 2 assists, 2 steals, and 4 boards.
On the road against Orlando? Is this that
No,
game?
this is against the Brooklyn Nets. On the road against the Brooklyn Nets.
Okay.
A very, very bad Brooklyn Nets team that after this game was 8-33. Barf. The Raptors, of course, pretty good this year, 28-13, although this win did precede the January downturn that led to the trades for PJ Tucker and Serge Ibaka. I've given you all the context clues I'm giving you now. 10 players played for the Raptors in this game, 9 if you take out Fred VanVleet, who I just gave away. Guess away who you got, who played in this game for the Toronto Raptors.
So you said this was before the Ibaka trade?
This was before the Ibaka and PJ Tucker trades, yes.
Okay, so you've already given me Fred. So, Lowry.
Lowry's incorrect. He was hurt. Didn't play in this game. Sorry.
Okay. DeRozan.
DeRozan is correct. He played 37 minutes, had 36 points on 13 of 28 shooting, 11 boards, 6 assists. Really nice game from old DeMar DeRozan. Filling in for the injured Kyle Lowry, of course, is the main dude on the team.
Terrence Ross.
Terrence Ross had a nice game off the bench, 15 points, 6 of 11, 3 of 7 from deep, 4 boards, 2 assists, a steal, and 2 blocks.
Okay.
So got 3 if you count Fred.
JV.
Jonas Valanciunas, correct. 29 minutes, 7 points, 10 boards, 3 of 7 from the field, and a +1. You've got 3, just 1 strike.
Okay.
I'm glad I put the bed music in for the thinking parts of this game. I've learned.
2016-17. So Corey Joseph.
Corey Joseph is the standout of this box score. He started in place of the injured Kyle Lowry. Of course, Fred got into the bench unit because of the injured Kyle Lowry as well. Corey Joseph, 37 minutes, 15 of 22 from the field, 33 points and a +16. Unreal, Corey Joseph. And he did it all. He had 2 free throws and 1 made 3 in the game. So all from 2-point range. Those slick little Corey Joe twirling layups and mid-range jumpers. Good one from Corey Joe. You got 4 right, 1 strike.
So Corey Joseph is the inspiration for all of Pascal's ethical 30 balls.
Yes, 100%. The progenitor of ethical basketball, Corey Joseph, the one and only.
Okay, so Corey Joseph is on there. So if Corey played, Fred played, Kyle was on there, so did DeLon?
DeLon did not play in this game. Interesting. Not even listed on the box scores, dressed. So that's your 2nd strike. I'll give you, so there's 2 guys in the starting 5 you've not yet gotten, and 3 guys off the bench. And you may have already said the name of one of those guys. This is the last hint you're getting.
I said the name of one of the guys, so why didn't I get
You just said it in relation to invoking Corey Joseph.
Oh, Pascal.
Yeah, Pascal, baby. This is his rookie year. He came off the bench, 14 minutes, 4 points. Surely as leak out layups, because that's the only way Pascal scored as a rookie. But yeah, Pascal +14 in this game.
Okay, so I've named 6. I've got 4 more to go.
Yeah, we've got 6 guys, including Fred. Yeah, so you got 4 players left and 2 strikes.
Yeah, I'm just writing the players down as I name them.
That's fair. That's an allowable thing to do. As long as you're not looking at Basketball Reference, we're good.
So I have not named starters. So this time,
I'll give you one more hint. One of the starters is really weird.
One of the starters is really weird.
When you consider that Valanciunas is also one of the starters. Did I hear you say Damari?
Yeah.
Yeah, DeMarre Carroll played in this game. Played 26 minutes. Started 9 points, 3 of 8 from the field, 3 of 4 from deep for old DeMarre.
Considering JV started, this starter is weird.
I'm trying to envision this lineup in my brain, and it is
so basically you're saying it was a too big lineup.
Sure. Yeah, sure. Why
not? And so 2016-17 Raptors. This is the team that got swept by the Cavs.
They did. Started off wonderfully, hit a bit of a snag in January, made big trades in February.
Right.
Yeah.
Man, I am drawing a blank now. Fred.
Again, there are 3 guys left that you need to get. 1 starter who's weird, 2 bench guys. One of them plays for the Raptors still.
One plays for Raptors still. 16, 17. And is still playing for the Raptors. Oh, Yak.
Yeah, Jakob Poeltl played 15 minutes off the bench. 1 bucket made on 1 attempt, 2 points, 2 boards, an assist, and a block. A plus 5.
Okay.
You got 2 guys left.
So, damn.
I love this game. It makes everybody so mad.
Oh, okay. So, who else would have been a center on the team at this time? Wait.
Oh. This is, by the way, this is definitely the image that's going up on the thumbnail when I post it later, is you staring off into the distance in profile. It's great.
So I think this is probably my third X, but I want to say Patrick Patterson was still on this team.
Patrick Patterson was on this team, but he was injured and did not play. That is your third strike. You have lost that random Raptors game. I am the winner. The guy you missed in the starting 5. Bebe. Lucas Nogueira, 7 minutes played. Him and Jonas starting next to one another in an NBA game is incredible stuff. Love it. And then also off the bench, Norman Powell with a very 2017 Norman Powell line of 0 for 2 in 18 minutes. This was before he really took off, of course. For some reason, I was just under the assumption that Norm would have been playing with a 905 at this time for some reason. Yeah, I hear that. It's a shame. But you have lost that random Raptors game. It's a real bummer. I might keep a score. I'm going to play this more regularly throughout the summer.
That was a bad assumption. It would have been 15-16 when he was there.
Who was that? Sorry?
No, that was a bad assumption on my part. 15-16, he would have been with a 905. He would have been. Yeah, that was just terrible on my part.
It's all right, man. It happens. It's a game that gets the best of us. Not me, but because I would never play. I'm never going to make myself look like a fool or anything like that. But you gave it a spirited effort. It is, of course, time to wrap up the show now. And we will get more people with that random Raptors game at some point throughout the offseason because it's fun. And we like fun here on the podcast. Do you have anything you want to promote before we get out of here, Big V?
The usual stuff, Raptors.com. That is still going.
You spoke with Grady Dick.
I spoke with Grady Dick. There's a Q&A up that you can read up on. And then hoping to speak with a few people during Summer League. Obviously, I'm not in Vegas, but looking to set some phoners up and do some stuff off that. So you can stay tuned for that.
It's a shame you don't get to hang out in the hotel room basketball court they've set up. Just throwing it back to the Tampa days, baby. It's lovely. Actually looks awesome. Seems like a lot of fun. I would like to play on a basketball court in a hotel ballroom myself. We'll leave it there, though. Big V, thanks for hanging. Thanks for being a good sport playing that random Raptors game, a game that gets most people who play it because it's really hard. We will be back tomorrow. Jamar Hines will be along. We'll come up with some fun stuff for that. Maybe I'll just play this game again tomorrow with Jamar because that's fun, too. Either way, please go support the show by following, subscribing, rating, reviewing. Join the Discord. The link is in the description. It's a lot of fun. We got like 140 people in there talking about fake trades and all sorts of good stuff. So come hang out. Join the little community we got building around the show. Subscribe on YouTube, your podcast apps, etc., etc. Follow me on Twitter at Woodley Sean. I'm sure I'll be on some other dumb social media sometime soon as well, because everyone's moving and social media will never go away. But in the meantime, thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks for hanging, and we'll talk to you Friday. Bye-bye.